In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold.
The serpent turned and spoke ill-humoredly. Truly you pester me. Opposites were certainly an element of life for me. You probably will have noticed this. Your innovations deprive me of this source of power. I can either lure you with pathos or annoy you with banality. I am somewhat baffled. And Carl said, if you are baffled, should I give you counsel? I would rather you dive down to the deeper grounds in which you have entry and ask Hades or the heavenly ones. Perhaps someone there can give you counsel. And the serpent replies, you have become imperious. Carl says, necessity is even more imperious than I. I must live and be able to move. You have the whole wide earth. What do you want to ask? What do you want to ask the beyond for? The serpent asks. Carl says, it isn't curiosity that drives me, but necessity. I will not yield. And the serpent says, I obey, but reluctantly. This style is new and unaccustomed to me. Jung, I'm sorry, but there is pressing need. Tell the depths that prospects are no longer looking good for us because we have cut off an important organ from life. As you know, I'm not the guilty one, since you have led me carefully along this way. And the serpent says, you might have rejected the apple. Enough of these jokes, Carl says. You know the story better than I do. I am serious. We need some air. Be on your way and fetch the fire. It has already been dark around me for too long. Are you sluggish or cowardly? And the serpent says, I am off to work. Take from me what I bring up.
The Abracast, occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining me. I'm John Towers and this is the Abracast. We are in the end. We're in the end zone here of the Liber Novus, Carl Gustav Jung's the Liber Novus, or it's called the Red Book. We're in the last chapter we're going to be covering, which is the chapter entitled The Magician. So before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone to check out Abracast.com. Also remind everybody that we are going to be scheduling a break. After 5 long years, I'm going to be taking some time off. I do have some fun stuff lined up for you. If you've never been a subscriber to any of the various orders or tiers on any of the subscription services, then you are in for a wonderful treat. Wonderful treat. So I don't want to announce the days or anything quite yet, or the time frame, but just to give you guys a heads up that some vacation time is coming, and it's leading up to and correlating with the anniversary of the show. Okay, so anyhow, let's get into it. The snake goes off to work, and Jung is observing Carl Carl is observing. Coral! Slowly the throne of God ascends into empty space, followed by the holy trinity, all of heaven, and finally Satan himself. He resists and clings to his beyond. He will not let it go. The upper world is too chilly for him. And the serpent says, have you got a tight hold of him? And Jung says, welcome, hot thing of darkness. I am sorry. That tickles me. Hot thing of darkness. God, Carl Jung knows my wife. My soul probably pulled you up right roughly. And the serpent says, why this noise? I protest against this violent extraction. Carl, calm down, Carl says. I don't expect you to come last of all. You seem to be the hardest part. And the serpent says, what do you want from me? I do not need you, impertinent fellow. And Jung says, it's a good thing we have you. You're the liveliest thing in the whole dogma. What concern is your prattle to me? And make it quick. I am freezing, the serpent says. Listen, something has just happened to us. We have united the opposites. Among other things, we have bonded you with God, Carl says. And the serpent says, for God's sake, why this hopeless fuss? Why such nonsense? And Jung says, please. That wasn't so stupid. This unification is an important principle. We have to stop the never-ending quarreling and finally free our hands for real life. Wow. This reminds me of like those old movies like in the 70s and 80s, like a Rocky Horror Picture Show. Or Young Frankenstein, where did they do it in Blazing Saddles, where like the movie like stops being a narrative and just kind of like becomes sort of self-aware. You know, they break into like dancing numbers and all this stuff. That's what this part reminds me of. Where it's like he finally gets this hint of unification. All of a sudden, they're kind of arguing about it. And Jung says, please, this wasn't so stupid. The unification is an important principle. We have put a stop to the never-ending quarreling to finally free our hands for real life. And the serpent says, this smells of monism. I have already made note of some of these men's special chambers have been heated for them. And Jung says, you're mistaken. Matters are not as rational with us as they seem to be. We have no single correct truth either, rather a more remarkable and strange fact that has occurred after the opposites had been united quite unexpectedly and incomprehensibly. Nothing further happened. Everything remained in place, peaceful and yet completely motionless, and life turned into a complete standstill. Yes, you fools, you certainly have made a pretty mess of things. The serpent says, well, your mockery is unnecessary. Our intentions were serious. Jung says. The serpent answers, your seriousness leads us to suffer. The ordering of the beyond is shaken to its foundation. And Jung says, so you realize that matters are serious. I want an answer to my question. What should happen under these circumstances? We no longer know what to do. And the serpent says, well, it is hard to know what to do and difficult to give advice, even if one would like to give it. You are blinded fools, a brashly impertinent people. Why didn't you stay out of trouble? How do you mean to understand the ordering of the world? And Jung says, your ranting suggests that you are quite thoroughly aggravated. Look, man, the Holy Trinity is taking things coolly. It seems not to dislike the innovations. The serpent says, the Trinity is so irrational, that one. and never trust its reactions. I strongly advise you not to take those symbols seriously. And Carl Gustav Jung says, thank you for the well-meant advice, but you seem to be interested. One would expect you to pass unbiased judgment on the account of your proverbial intelligence. The serpent says, me, unbiased? You can judge for yourself, but you consider this absoluteness, it's completely lifeless equanimity. You can easily discover that this state, the standstill produced by your presumptuousness, closely resembles the absolute. But if I counsel you, I place myself completely on your side, since you too find this standstill unbearable. What? Jung says, you're taking my side? That is strange. And the serpent says, that's not so strange. The absolute was always adverse to the living. I am still the real master of life. Jung says, that is suspicious. Your reaction is far too personal. And the serpent says, my reaction is far from personal. I'm utterly restless, quickly hurrying life. I am never contented, never unperturbed. I pull everything down and hastily rebuild it. I am ambition, greed for fame, lust for action. I am the fizz of new thoughts and action. The absolute is boring and vegetative. All right. I believe you. Jung says, so just what do you advise? The best advice, the serpent says, I can give you is to revoke your completely harmful innovation as soon as possible. Well, what would be gained by that? Jung says, we'd have to start from scratch again, and I would infallibly reach the same conclusion a second time. What one has grasped once, one cannot intentionally not know again. And undo your counsel is no counsel, and the serpent says, but you could exist without divisiveness and disunity. You have to get worked up about something, represent a party, overcome opposites if you want to live. Jung says, that does not help. We also see each other in the opposite. We have grown tired of this game. And the serpent says, and so with life. Jung says, it seems to me that it depends on what you call life. Your notion of life has to do with climbing up and tearing down, with assertion and doubt, with impatient dragging around, with hasty desire. You lack the absolute in its forbearing patience. And the serpent says, quite right. My life bubbles and foams and stirs up turbulent waves, and it consists of seizing and throwing away, ardent wishing and restlessness. That is life, isn't it? And Jung says, but the absolute also lives. And the serpent says, that is no life. That is a standstill, or as good as a standstill. Or rather, it lives intermittently, slowly, and wastes thousands of years, just like the miserable condition that you have created. And Jung says, you enlighten me. You are personal life, and the apparent standstill is forbearing life of eternity, a life of divinity. This time you have counseled me well, and I will let you go. Farewell. Farewell, snake. Satan crawls deftly like a mole back into his hole again. The symbol of the Trinity and its entourage rises up in peace and equanimity to heaven. I thank you, serpent, for hauling up the right one for me. Everyone understands his words since they are personal, and we can live again a long life, and we can waste thousands of years. Where to begin? Oh, gods. In suffering or in joy or in the mixed feeling lying between. The beginning is always the smallest. It begins in nothing. If I begin there, I see the little drops of something that falls into the sea of nothingness. It is forever about beginning again, down where the nothingness widens itself to unrestricted freedom. Nothing has happened, yet the world has to begin. The sun is not yet born. The watery firmament has not been separated. We have not yet climbed onto the shoulders of our Father, since our fathers have not yet become. They've only just died and rest in the womb of our bloodthirsty Europe. We stand in the vastness wed to the serpent and consider which stone could be the foundation stone of the building, which we do not yet know. The most ancient, it is suitable as a symbol. We want something graspable. We are wary of the webs that the day weaves and the night unpicks. The devil is probably supposed to create it, that paltry partisan with sham understanding and greedy hands. He emerges from the lump of manure in which the gods had skewered their eggs. Ugh. I would like to kick the garbage away from me if the golden seed were not in the vile heart of the misshapen form. Arise then, son of darkness and stench. Oh, how firmly you cling to the rubble and waste of the eternal cesspit. I do not fear you, though I hate you, your brother of everything reprehensible in me. Today you shall be forged with heavy hammers, so the gold of the gods will spray out of your body. Your time is over, your years are numbered, and today your day of judgment has gone to smithereens. May your casing burst asunder with the hands we wish to take hold of your seed, the golden one, and free it from your slithery mud. You may freeze, devil, since we will cold forge you. Steel is harder than ice, and you shall fit into our forms, you thief of the divine marvel, you mother ape. You who stuff your body with the egg of the gods, and therefore make yourself weighty. Hence we curse you, though not because of you, but for the sake of the golden seed. What serviceable forms rise from your body, your thinking, or your thieving abyss? These appear as elemental spirits dressed in wrinkled garb, cavalry, with delightful misshapen forms, young yet old, dwarfish, shriveled, unspectacular bearers of secret arts, possessors of ridiculous wisdom, first formations of the unformed gold. Worms that crawl from the liberated egg of the gods, incipient ones, born, unborn, still invisible. What should your appearance be to us? What new arts do you bear up from the inaccessible treasure chamber? The sun yoke of the egg of the gods, you still have roots in the soil like plants, and you are animal faces of the human body. You are foolishly sweet, uncannily primordial, and unearthly. We cannot grasp your essence, you gnomes, you object souls. You have origins in the lowest. Do you want to become giants, you Tom Thumbs? Do you belong to the followers of the sons of the earth? Are you the earthly feet of the Godhead? What do you want? Speak! Here we go. The cavalry says, we come to greet you, master of the lower nature. And Jung says, are you speaking to me? Am I your master? And the cavalry says, you were not, but you are now. And Jung says, Master Carl says, so you declare, and so be it. Yet What should I do with your following? And the vocabulary says, we carry what is not to be carried from below to above. We are the juices that rise secretly, not by force, but sucked out of inertia and affixed to what is growing. We know the unknown ways and the inexplicable laws of living nature. We carry up what slumbers in the earthly, what is dead and yet enters into the living. We do this slowly and easily. What do you do in vain in your human ways? We complete what is impossible for you. And Master Jung says, what should I leave to you? Which troubles can I transfer to you? What should I not do? And what do you do better? And the vocabulary says, you forget the lethargy of matter. You want to pull up with your own force, and you can rise slowly, ingesting itself, affixed to itself from within. Spare yourself the trouble, or you will disturb our work. Should I trust you, you unworthy ones? Master Jung says, you slaves and slave souls, get to work. Let it be so. So it seems to me I gave you a long time. Neither did I descend to you, nor did I disturb your work. I lived in the light of day and did the work of the day. And what did you do? The vocabulary says, we hauled things up, we built, we placed stone upon stone. Now you stand on solid ground. Master Jung says, I feel the ground more solid. I stretch upwards. And the vocabulary says, we forged a flashing sword for you, with which you can cut the knot that entangles you. I take the sword firmly in my hands and I lift it for the blow. And the vocabulary says, we also placed before you the devilish, skillfully twined knot that locks and seals you. Strike, only sharpness will cut through it. Master Jung says, let me see it, the great knot all around. Truly a masterpiece of inscrutable nature. A wily, natural tangle of roots grown through one another. Only Mother Nature, the blind weaver, could work such a tangle. A great snarled ball and 1,000 small knots of artfully tied, intertwined. Truly a human brain. Am I seeing straight? What did you do? You set my brain before me. Did you give me a sword so that the flashing sharpness slices through my brain? What are you thinking of? It's fucking weird, man. The vocabulary says, the womb of nature wove the brain, the womb of the earth gave the iron, so the mother gave you both, the entanglement and the severing. Mysterious, Jung said. Do you really want me to make me the executioner of my own brain? And the vocabulary says, it benefits you, the master of the lower nature. Man is entangled in his brain, and the sword is also given to him to cut through these entanglements. What is the entanglement you speak of? Master Jung says. And the vocabulary answers, the entanglement is your madness. The sword is the overcoming of madness. Oh, I gotta make a personal note here. You offsprings of the devil, who told you that I am mad. You earth spirits, you roots of clay and excrement, you are not yourselves the root fibers of my brain, you polyp snared rubbish. Channels for juice knotted together, parasites upon parasites, all sucked up and deceived, secretly climbing up and over one another by night. You deserve the flashing sharpness of my... Now it's my sword all of a sudden. You deserve the flashing sharpness of my sword, which you guys just built and gave to me. You want to persuade me to cut through you? Are you contemplating self-destruction? How come nature gives birth to creatures that she herself wants to destroy? The Calibri says, do not hesitate. We need destruction since we ourselves are the entanglement. I don't know why I make them like drone. We need destruction since we ourselves are the entanglement. He who wishes conquer new land brings down the bridges behind him. Let us not exist anymore. We are the 1,000 canals in which everything also flows back again to its origin. I should sever my own roots, kill my own people. Whose king am I? Should I make my own trees wither? You really are the sons of the devil, Master Jung says in the Calibri. Say, strike, we are servants. We want to die for their master. What will happen if I strike? Master Jung says, and the Calibri says, then you will no longer be your brain, but will exist beyond your madness. Do you not see your madness as your brain, the terrible entanglement and intertwining in the connection of the roots and the nets of the canals, the confusion of fibers being engrossed in the brain makes you wild? Strike! He who finds the way rises up over his brain. You are a Tom Thumb in the brain. Beyond the brain, you gain the form of a giant. We are surely sons of the devil. But did you not forge us out of the hot and the dark? So we have something of its nature of yours. The devil says that everything exists is also worthy since it perishes. The sons of the devil, we want destruction. But as your creatures, we want our own destruction. We want to rise up in you through death. We are roots that suck up from all sides. Now you have everything you need. Therefore, chop us up, tear us out. Jung says, will I miss you as servants, as a master? I need slaves. Calibri says the master serves himself. And Jung says, you ambiguous sons of the devil, these words are your undoing, and may my sword strike you. This blow shall be valid forever. And the Calibri says, whoa, whoa, what we feared, what we desired has come to pass. What a fucking weird... Okay. He's killing his shit creatures. I mean, I set foot on a new land, and nothing brought up should flow back. No one shall tear down what I have built. My tower is of iron and has no seams. The devil is forged into the foundations. The Calibri built it, and the master builders were sacrificed with the sword of the battlements of the tower. Just as the tower surmounts the summit of the mountain on which it stands, so I stand above my brain from which I grew. I have become hard and cannot be undone. No more do I flow back. I am the master of my own self. I admire my mastery. I am strong and beautiful and rich. The vast lands and the blue skies have laid themselves before me. I bowed to my mastery. I wait upon no one, and no one waits upon me. I served myself. I myself serve. Therefore, I have what I need. So this reminds me back, like he's talked about this a few times in the book, where he's like, don't look for help. When you run into problems, bro, no one's going to fucking help you. Like, why would you look for people to help you with your own with your problems? I fucking love it. So here, we're going to take a break here at this. Could be said by Zarathustra, right? This could be said by Zarathustra. This could be said by Aleister Crowley. This could be said by Ayn Rand. Just as well. The vast lands in the blue sky have laid themselves before me, and I bowed to my mastery. I wait upon no one, and no one waits upon me. I serve myself, and I myself serve. Therefore, I have what I need.
Learn more at Abracast.com. Get bonus content by signing up for the mailing list. Get all that, plus many exclusive episodes by supporting the show at Subscribestar.com.
Hey, so just a quick reminder, Abracast.com. Also, just a quick note. And we'll be taking some time off here in correlation with the 5-year anniversary of the show. So keep on the lookout for some special stuff that's going to be happening on the feed during my vacation. All right, back to it. My tower grew for several thousand years, imperishable. It does not sink back, but it can be built over and will be built over. Few grasp my tower since it stands on high mountains, but many will see it and not grasp it. Therefore, my tower will remain unused. No one scales its smooth walls. No one lands on its pointed roof. Only he who finds the entrance hidden in the mountains and rises up through the labyrinths of the innards can reach the tower. In the happiness of he who surveys things from there, and he who lives from himself, this has been attained and created. It has not arisen from patchwork of human thoughts. It has been forged from the glowing heart of the innards. The Calibri themselves carried the matter to the mountain and consecrated the buildings with their own blood as the sole keepers of the mystery of its genesis. I build it out of the lower and the upper beyond, and not from the surface of the world. Therefore it is new and strange and towers over the plains inhabited by humans. This is the solid and the beginning. I have united with the serpent from beyond. I have accepted everything beyond into myself. From this I have built my beginning. When this work was completed, I was pleased, and I felt curious to know what might still lie in my beyond. God, he just can't fucking get over it. So I approached my serpent, and I asked her amiably whether she would not like to creep over to bring me news of what was happening in the beyond. But the serpent was weary and said that she had no liking for this. Here we go. Okay, we have a dialogue here. Jung says, I don't want to force anything, but perhaps, who knows, we will still find something useful. For a while, the serpent hesitated. Then she disappeared into the depths, and soon I heard her voice. I believe that I have reached hell. There is a hanged man here. Plainly ugly man with a contorted face stands before me. He has protruding ears and a hunch back. And he said, I am a prisoner who was condemned to the rope. And Jung said, well, what did you do? I poisoned my parents and my wife. He said, well, why did you do that? He said, to honor God. And Jung says, what? To honor God? What do you mean by that? And the hanged man said, first of all, everything that happens is for the honor of God. And secondly, I had my own ideas. And Jung says, what went through your mind? The hangman said, what did I do? The hangman said, I loved them and I wanted to transport them more quickly from the wretched life into the eternal blessedness. I gave them too strong a nightcap. Jung said, and did this not lead you to find out what your own interest in this was? And he says, I was alone now and very unhappy. I wanted to live for the sake of my 2 children from whom I foresaw a better future. I was in better health than my wife, so I wanted to live. Did your wife agree to these murders? Jung asked. No, she certainly would have contested, but she knew nothing of my intentions. Unfortunately, the murder was discovered and I was condemned to death. And Jung says, have you found your relatives again in this beyond? And he says, that's a strange and unlikely story. I suspect that I'm in hell. Sometimes it seems as if my wife were here too. She sometimes, I'm not sure, just a little as sure of my own self. What is it like? Tell me, Jung says. And the hangman says, from time to time, she seems to speak to me, and I reply, but we haven't spoken about either the murder or our children until now. We have only speak together here and there, and only about trivial things, small matters from our earlier daily life to completely impersonal, as if we no longer had anything to do with each other. But the true nature of the things eludes me. I see even less of my parents. I believe that I have yet to meet my mother. My father was here once and said something about his tobacco pipe, which he had lost somewhere. Jung says, how do you pass your time? And the hangman said, I believe that there is no time with us, so there is none to spend. Nothing at all happens. That isn't that extremely boring? So nothing ever happens. I wonder if this is like, of course it is, right? This, like the standstill, like when the unification took place and he was arguing with the serpent, and the serpent's talking about how it's like a standstill and nothing occurs. So this is just another way to look at it as a hell. This is like a Stoic philosophy thing. When the ancient Greek Stoic philosophers would talk about like the fear of change, they would say like, well, how would it go? It would be like, well, everything changes. You couldn't enjoy a warm bath without the fire changing the wood. You couldn't enjoy, a glass of wine without the grapes changing. Like, change in and of itself isn't bad, but what if it stopped? What if change stopped? What if everything stopped? Oh boy. Anyhow, the hanged man says, boring. I've never thought about it like that. Boring, perhaps, but there is nothing interesting. In actual fact, it's pretty much all the same. Jung says, doesn't the devil ever torment you? And the hanged man said, the devil, I have seen nothing of him. You have come from beyond, and yet you have nothing to report. I find this hard to believe, Jung says. And the hanged man says, when I still had a body, I often thought that surely it would be interesting to speak to one of those dead. But now the prospects mean nothing much to me. As I said, everything here is impersonal and purely matter of fact. As far as I know, that's what they say. That is bleak, Jung says. I assume that you are now in the deepest hell. Hangman said, I don't care. I guess I can go now, can I? Farewell. Suddenly he vanished. But I turned to the serpent. I said, what should this boring guest from beyond mean? And the serpent says, I met him over there, stumbling around restlessly like so many others. I chose him as the next best. He strikes me as a good example. But he is beyond so colorless. But is the beyond so colorless? And the serpent says, it seems so. There is nothing but motion when I make my way over there. Everything merely surges back and forth in a shadowy way. There's nothing personal whatsoever. And Jung said, what is it then? To the damned personal quality, Satan recently made a strong impression on me, as if he were the quintessence of the personal. Oh, of course he would, the serpent said, since he is the eternal adversary, and because you can never reconcile personal life with absolute life. And Jung says, can't one unite these opposites? And the serpent says, there are no opposites, but simply differences, just as little as you make the day the opposite of the year, or the bushel the opposite of a cubit. And Jung says, that's enlightening, but somewhat boring. The serpent says, as always, when one speaks of the beyond, it goes on withering away, particularly since we have balanced the opposites and married, I believe the dead will soon become extinct. The devil is the sum of the darkness of human nature. He who lives in light strives towards the image of God, and he who lives in the dark strives towards being the image of the devil. Because I wanted to live in the light, the sun went out for me. When I touched the depths, it was the dark and the serpent-like. I united myself with it and did not overpower it. I took my part of the humiliation, the subjugation upon myself, and that I took on the nature of the serpent. If I had not become like the serpent, the devil, the quintessence of everything serpent-like, would have held this bit of power over me. This would have given the devil a grip, and he would have forced me to make a pact with him, just as he also cunningly deceived Faust. But I forestalled him by uniting myself with the serpent, just as a man unites with a woman. So I took away from the devil the possibility of influence, which only ever passed through one's own serpenthood, which one commonly assigns to the devil instead of oneself. Mephistopheles is Satan taken with my serpenthood. Satan himself is the quintessence of evil, naked, and therefore without seduction. Not even clever, but pure negotiation without convincing force. Thus I resisted his destructive influence. As I grasped him and I fettered him firmly, his descendants served me, and I sacrificed them with the sword. The shit demons. Thus, I built a firm structure through this. I myself gained stability and duration, and could withstand the fluctuations of the personal. Therefore, the immoral in me is saved. Through drawing the darkness from my beyond over into the day, I emptied my beyond. Therefore, the demands of the dead disappeared, so they were satisfied. I am no longer threatened by the dead, since I accept them, their demands, although accepting the serpent. But through this, I have also taken over something of the dead into my day. Yet it is necessary, since death is the most enduring of all things, that which can never be canceled out. Death gives me durability and solidity. So long as I wanted to satisfy my own demands, I was personal and therefore living in the sense of the world. But when I recognized the demands of the dead in me and satisfied them, I give up my earlier personal strivings, and the world had to take me for a dead man. For great cold comes over whoever, in the excess of his personal strivings, had recognized the demands of the dead and seek to satisfy them. While he feels as if mysterious poisons had paralyzed the living quality of his personal relations, the voices of the dead remain silent in his beyond. The threat, the fear, the restlessness cease. For everything had previously lurked hungrily in him, no longer lives with him in his day, his life, his beautiful and rich, since he is himself. But whoever always wants only the fortune of others is ugly, since he cripples himself. A murderer is one who wants to force others to blessedness, since he kills his own growth. A fool is one who exterminates his love for the sake of love. Such a one is personal to the other. His beyond is gray and impersonal. He forces himself upon others, therefore he is cursed into forcing himself upon himself in a cold nothingness. He who has recognized the demands of the dead has banished his ugliness to the beyond. He no longer greedily forces himself upon others, but lives alone in beauty and speaks with the dead. So there comes the day, and the demands of the dead are also satisfied. If one still perseveres in solitude, beauty fades into the beyond, into the wasteland, comes over onto this side. A black stage comes after the white, and heaven and hell are forever there.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.
If you're considering supporting the show on Subscribestar, let me tell you a little bit about what's going on over there. The degree of the Red Archive, which is the $1 a month, you get access to some bonus audio, but there's also 50 plus hours of archived episodes. These are older episodes. They're not on the stream anymore. It's the only place to find them is in the Red Archive. There's